Welcome to the Immigration Lawyers Podcast. I am the host, Attorney John Khosravi, and I practice U.S. immigration law exclusively. For more information about the program, please visit www.immigrationlawyerspodcast.com. Please note that this recording is informational only and does not constitute legal advice. Please consult with a licensed attorney for specific legal guidance that suits your case. Also, this recording is copyrighted and written permission is required for rebroadcasting. For more information about me, please visit www.jqqlaw.com.
Hi everyone, thank you for tuning into this episode of the Immigration Lawyers Podcast. It's going to be a great episode because it's a recap of 2019 and all the events that happened in immigration law. It's going to be longer just because of how many things that did happen, but I have a colleague and friend, immigration attorney Nicholas Mireles here to go through this stuff and add commentary and thoughts on what it is and try to go through it based on agency, starting with CBP, ending up with EOIR and courts and all that kind of stuff, and everything in between to kind of just refresh everybody's heads on what happened. If you missed something, you'll catch it now. There's just so much to go. We'll try to keep it within some sort of time slot, but we'll see what happens. Nicholas, thank you for coming today.
Of course. It's funny because when I think, we have a lot to go over, who better than you and I, considering the length we're just comfortably talking about anything. And so I'm ready to dive in.
Let's go. So starting with CBP, when I'm imagining the immigration process now, especially when I teach, I'm like, well, one of the first interactions you have when you enter the U.S. is CBP. Maybe Department of State would be better because you got to get the visa first. But at the mainland is CBP, and so I started the process of what we're going to discuss with them, and I thought that was kind of it's apropos. I don't even know what apropos means.
Yeah, apropos is like appropriate. Absolutely.
Yeah, apropos. Yeah, okay. So to start with them, especially because it seems like the biggest crisis that's happening, has caught people's attention, is the migration crisis from South and Central America, the kids and stuff like that.
And on that note, I would say, because even more than DOS at the consulate, there's such little avenue to address anything. They make a decision and then that's it.
Yeah.
Or at least with the Department of State, there is, although not great, at least some avenues, emails, phone numbers, and maybe if you do have relationships. So to the idea that CBP is apropos to start with, because it kind of is not a shadow organization, but one that has such strong authority with very little, if any, oversight or appeal process.
Yeah, and one thing that people call me a lot is that when they get expedited removal, there's no appeal process written in statute.
Just had this call. And basically he had a change of status to a P1, and when he was coming back in, he just didn't explain that. And so they said, you overstayed your B1, B2, you said you worked, so ER. Wow. And so the company reaches out to me, and he was an athlete, and they're just freaking out because it's like, is there any way we can, and you deal with other attorneys, and they're like, there has to be a process to appeal.
Nope.
And you laugh,
yeah.
And so, I got, fortunately, from, the work we do locally, I have some good advice of what we maybe can at least throw against the wall.
Yeah.
At Department
Potentially
of State.
Department of State. Maybe if you contact the port, they could try to fix it up because they should have got that one. Yeah.
And we were able to, without getting too sidetracked, we were able to at least have a conversation of a re-review.
Okay.
Somebody's waiting
That's
for the
much
point.
you could ask, yeah.
And you educate both the pro se's or the public or other attorneys that don't practice immigration, and you have to tell them the fact that they even responded, let alone said we'll look into it.
That's how they know
huge.
you too.
There's some relationship equity that's been built up.
No, with jumping ahead, it's actually 2020 with the almost war with Iran. They even stopped Iranians at the border and questioning him more. And I've been getting the calls now. Could you come support me? And a lot of immigration attorneys on Facebook are like, oh yeah, who could go to LAX and do this kind of stuff? And I posted, there's nothing you can do. And they're like, no, when we did it during the travel ban, and allegedly some people say this stuff, but there's no authority.
I was there in 2017, and it was a crisis. And so what was done was maybe through some back channels we were able to get some information. But even then, there's no system. It's just, can you go down there and maybe have somebody's there? Sure.
Yeah.
But will it happen? Probably not.
Yeah. And a lot of it is just moral support and public outreach, just so they know. Yeah.
I think
that's needed too. But
actions speak louder than words. And even if there's nothing that can be done for the sake of, from a business standpoint, I'll pay you just to go down there and be a presence. From a advocate standpoint, going down there and trying to, go to Tom Bradley and go to the clerk and say, hey, this is what's going on. Mm-hmm. Is so-and-so here? Is this person here, that person here that we have relationships with?
Yeah.
Because just from the standpoint of, counsel, there's really nothing we can do. At least we found that out. from maybe somebody that actually has authority.
And it's kind of always, you have to go local counsel that goes to the liaison meetings, knows somebody that could, like, at least out of respect just give an answer, or to give a no answer, but at least talk to
you.
And
I think that's it. It's a level of respect. And as we always talk about at our meetings, there's so much negative publicity that they get that they think we're all part of the problem.
Yeah.
So when we can show them that we're actually on their side and just trying to understand black and white and what can and cannot be done, I think you do build up that equity.
At the last meeting, I was telling them, I'm like, you guys at LAX need to get a publicist or something like that, because they keep getting this bad stuff in the papers that actually they're justified in what they did because people are doing violations.
Yeah.
But people don't know these things are violations, so then they just give bad stuff about them in the news. And it doesn't look bad.
It's like police. I mean, it's like, probably a lot of people are doing their job, but the people that aren't, that is outrageous, and then you act emotionally. So it's interesting because I doubt I'm sure behind closed doors they say the same stuff, and at the end of the day they probably know who the people are that are causing the problems and things of that nature. So
all right, so let's get down to, so I mean, with the crisis that's happening, there's different things that they've initiated. Trump is trying to get like 15,000 new border officers, immigration officers going. That's never going to happen. Trying to recruit that much take 2 years, not enough people. They're even trying to decrease the standards of employing people. They would just be together.
Which we've seen that through years, right? We get this at CBP that they say no matter where you're hired, you immediately go down to San Ysidro.
LAX is running out. They don't have people. They need people.
They lose people. People get absolutely.
And then, I mean, he's talking about, and he did deploy troops, U.S. troops at the border, which is, there's a law of posse comitatus or something like that. After, Lincoln abrogated, said you can't have U.S. troops inside the U.S. So having troops at the border, it's getting talked about. Usually, it's the right wing who talks about troops being sent in the U.S. because of the nature of the state and conspiracies and that kind of stuff. When Trump did it, they were kind of silent that there was active troops in the U.S. That was very disturbing. And the wall itself, there's billions of funding that they took out of defense spending, which again is, if the support wasn't blind towards the president, it would say, oh, you're taking our veterans' money.
Yeah. If they were at all critical in any type of objective way.
So, but that was recently, a Texas judge finally allowed that money to get released, so that's going to be happening. So there's a lot happening at the border. Catch and release is going to be ended, and they're trying to do full-on expedited removal, have it in the record.
Can you imagine? And can you imagine being in the front line and having to do that much paperwork?
It's just not possible. And the thread we're going to see in 2019 is this is grinding the internal systems of immigration department and their own internal people more than anything else.
Absolutely.
So I think the conclusion is they're trying to destroy immigration in general.
100%.
Yeah. So
this is that invisible wall our parent organization AILA likes to talk about, because whether it's not the actual wall, but there's this invisible way they're trying to sandbag and slow to a halt all legal immigration.
Mm-hmm. And so those are things out of the border. They're also trying to introduce biometric data sharing. So already, one thing they're doing is U.S. is sharing data with Canada, so that Mexicans can't go to Canada either if they've had some stuff. There's facial recognition. They try to push on citizens. They stopped that. But in 2020, we just got word they're going to start doing DNA collection, which is very disturbing.
Or at least try.
Yeah.
Fortunately, we have people at the ACLU and other nonprofits that realize this by any other name is just, it tramples the First Amendment in so many ways.
It's crazy. And so, but it's not just the southern border. I mean, the Canadians really have the most amount of overstays by far. Like, numbers are skyrocketing. And what we're seeing is actually cracking down there too. The number of 5-year bans, expedited removal bans from Canada has increased and doubled in number. So you keep hearing news articles where Canadians would come and go a lot. They're getting stopped, forbidden to come in. Mm-hmm. They're finally catching on to that. So the easy way out for Canadians to come in is getting switched up.
And we see that a lot, right? The aspect of you talk to a Canadian PC, potential client or a client, and everything's always easy for them. So when they finally have some type of consequence, it's a shock to them because it's like, this has never been a problem.
Yeah, exactly. And so other things they're doing is we've seen Chinese and Iranian students or PhD students coming here at the border getting expedited removal or getting their visas canceled before they come via the email without any notification. People coming as PhD students or do scholarly work, and so that was in the news. And one interesting thing is CBP, some CP officers for some reason went on board a plane and started asking, well, are you a citizen? Are you a citizen? Are you a citizen? People that are getting off a plane in San Francisco. And luckily the ACLU sued on that, and CBP was forced to settle and change its policy not to ask this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Because we have this issue where we have clients that are on B2 visas, they get married, and so they're waiting their adjustment status, but they don't have status, they're afraid to fly.
Of course.
I had a client yesterday, they're saying they got rid of their lawyer to come to me. They said, our lawyer says forbidden, you can't travel on an airplane. So I'm like, that's not true. Domestically you can. Very unlikely it's going to be an issue. But to not have that kind of problem, they take a train when they're visiting Texas, and I'm like, that's the worst thing you could have done.
On
go
the
to
ground,
Texas
absolutely.
and then I'm trained there. So, but when you have adjustment status case, usually they'll put you in a system so you have an A number, and they're not going to hassle you. But random stuff pops up. You never know when you're dealing with ICE.
And isn't that the concern, whether you're an attorney watching this or a member of the public, that because this is a gray area world, and we've oftentimes operated in the gray area or the world of discretion. If all of a sudden we now create a line in the gray that wasn't there before, the amount of panic because we don't know in a time where everybody wants to know facts and details because of the internet and our instant access, it's hard to be able to advise because the law says this, but in actuality this is what's going on. But ultimately it's your decision, right? I too think it's I don't think it's my job to parent my clients. I give them what it is and I let them know what I think they should do, but ultimately it's their call. So I too never tell people never fly or never travel, because
I never apply for advanced parole. I hate that when lawyers don't do that.
This is, not here, but another kind of paternalistic approach to the practice is basically saying, I don't want them to even have the opportunity to mess things up. And to me, that's absolutely overstepping the...
Big time. I mean, you might have, their mom got sick, is dying. Oh, now we need emergency advance parole. They may or may not give it. It's like when you can file for free, there's no filing fee coming. Yeah, we'll talk about the filing fee increases. But just get it, and then they can make a decision. They're adults, and they can make that decision.
And in this day and age, I get being overly cautious, but at the end of the day, our clients are the boss, not us. We advise, and that's that.
Too controlling, Okay. So moving on, so I'll CBP. We're going to talk about USCIS now, which is the agency you and I deal with the most. I mean, there's just so much to talk about. Things are happening. I didn't even know where to start. I guess the fee increases, that's not clear. This is a question that's constantly asked. When are the fee increases coming in? It's not clear. Right now it's January. I'm guessing by March it's probably come in or something. They have this extended period of review and all that kind of stuff. I mean, some of these fees are crazy. They're going to start charging for advanced parole, travel permission, work permit, EAD. The I-129s are going to have different fee schedules based on the kind that you're submitting. And people filing their own are going to get confused and have 100%. Cases returned constantly on this.
And what happens is people wait to the last minute. They're going to file it incorrectly. They're going to get it bounced back after a month, and now they're going to be out of status.
Yeah, it's a nightmare.
It's setting people up to fail. Absolutely.
And along with that, one thing we're seeing is with U visas and I-918 and asylum, if you leave one box unmarked, they return the case. Luckily, I saw there's a statute that says if you get something returned like that, it doesn't fall afoul of the 1 year filing statute for asylum. So that's a savior if you cite that statute. I'm sure they're going to say no at first, and you have to cite the CFR section. But that's such a nightmare for you not marking. Or some people write NA instead of none, or none instead of NA, and that's not acceptable. It's like really like
it's as ticky tacky as it comes, and it's again has no pragmatic or understandable reason why, other than to try to foul people up. 100%.
And they just put it on a website. They don't even put an announcement on USCIS.gov. They just change it internally, and then we gotta that's a rule now.
It's kind of like all of a sudden you have to drive on the left side of the road instead of the right. And if you didn't see this memo that went out on some government website, well then that's your problem. And so imagine if you're in this world where it's just they change procedure on a dime, and all of a sudden, unless you're very much integrated within the social media kind of network, how are you going to find this stuff out? And for our predecessors that have been doing this a long time, the same way over and over, you can imagine it's like news to them. And again, it's just another reflection that this is, you can be for controlled immigration, you can be for scaling back immigration, that's fine. We can have a conversation about the pros and cons. But to be for this is essentially trying to close our borders outright.
Or just, there's rule of law. If we have a rule, let's go by it. When tricks, it undermines the rule itself. Because people lose respect for it. That's the way it is.
If you hate the NFL, for example, if you hate the catch rules in the NFL, think about that being the case here, where all of a sudden a rule is not a rule. And in a big game, that rule is applied differently. This is everybody's life is a big game.
Well, I mean, speaking of applying differently in the big game, one of the reasons I stopped following basketball in the playoffs is because I saw back in the early 2000s when I was really into it, things would happen weird. It was a playoff game, and the points would go a different way, the calls would go a different way. It came out that the refs were cheating on that kind of stuff and giving benefits.
They were betting on the side, and that's going to play with. And as LA attorneys, big Dodger fans, it just came out that the Astros, and who beat us in the World Series a couple years ago, were cheating big
Really?
time. They were filming signs and things of that nature.
Is that why they fired someone? I saw in the headline. Okay.
Exactly. And so, sports are always, I think, an easy way to really understand a complex world like we live in immigration, where if that outrages you, and that's a game that actually has no bearing on your life, imagine a loved one. Imagine an employee that's your star employee for your startup that you're going to cash in big. All of a sudden, they have to go back home. Or all of a sudden, your family member is stuck in this purgatory of a 10-year wait.
Yeah.
And it's there's so much fear and anxiety that the least we can do is play by the same set of rules.
Yeah.
And so when they change them and all of a sudden apply different things, or say you have to fill it out with green, and if it's not in green, then this is what's going to happen. Again, it makes our job that much more fun.
Yeah, and one thing you mentioned earlier is if you're not into social media and keeping up, as an immigration lawyer, you have to be involved in all the immigration lawyers' social media groups and share the information.
Can't
you
imagine.
won't know, what's going on.
Because if you're a property lawyer, if you're a PI attorney, all of those things, very black and white. Any change, it's going to be in news, it's going to be in journals, it's going to be in magazines. Our world, because it's changed on the dime, as is the case for Politics 101. Imagine trying to follow politics these days without being on social media. You'd be reading about something from last week that's out of the headline already, because that's how quickly these things move. And so being integrated in these systems, understanding who's making decisions, and then paying attention to what they say, imperative, especially if you're an attorney watching this, or if you're somebody with an attorney, making sure that attorney is very much connected.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of times the client finds out the information first for the attorney, unfortunately. One note on that is I did launch a Facebook group for the Immigration Lawyers Toolbox. It's a private immigration attorneys group only. So, because I have so many listeners recently that contact me and stuff, so I thought it's a good place to put a group. It's not as much for giving advice on how to practice law. It's more if your field office does things a certain way, post it there so we could all know. And I'm sharing all the California-based field office stuff I get, and I share it out there. CBP procedures, anything, just push it out there so everyone knows. Email me info. What is the toolbox? info@immigrationlawyerstoolbox.com to get info on how to get on that Facebook page.
And I mean, to immigration attorneys listening and watching, there's never enough groups. Every group's important. And even if you get the same thing on 3 or 4 different groups or email chains or whatnot, that's more information.
To be a decent immigration attorney, you have to do these. Let alone be a great one. It's just so much work nowadays.
It's do you want to play from behind and be defense, or do you want to be offensive minded? And by being really pushing yourself to try to be on the front lines of these things, we get calls when things happen. If you're on the front lines when these things happen, then you can take that call, as opposed to maybe being like, oh, I've not heard of that. Let me get back to you, or actually giving them old advice.
Imagine filing a case with old advice and then finally did RFE or NOID on it. That's a gut punch right there. Like, oh no.
Thinking about doing H-1B for 30 years and all of a sudden you haven't done it in a few years and trying to do it now.
Yeah, I got to.
E2?
Yeah,
oh my God.
It's none of it makes any sense. But with the nastiness, the public charge rule was supposed to go into effect October 15. This is their reimagination of what a public charge person is. This person is going to be, a cost to the U.S. There's only one national injunction left in New York, and it's who knows when it's going to actually go into effect. Because they could on a dime tomorrow just announce it's over. So it's a mad dash to file these cases before they're filed. But as a practice, it's kind of hard. Like, I have cases right now, and I'm waiting on people's documents. And I'm like, if it comes into effect, there's a new form. I'm not sure what's going on with that. There's more of this, that.
Is it going to be
pricing
an
it, it's all over the place. So that's a really difficult thing as a practitioner, let alone for the clients to deal with. How are you seeing these issues? How do you guide clients on this public charge issue?
So I think the thing about being an advocate, counsel, someone who's really supposed to be I like the term Sherpa, to the climbing this mountain, is really just keeping them aware that this is what it is today. However, things are changing. Or if they ask you about things that they're hurt about or scared about, being very upfront about it. I don't know all the answers, but nobody does. And so the way my office really tries to run, and me just as an attorney, is transparency and being very open-ended. Because I think as a consumer, as a customer myself, I never like feeling like somebody's hiding something from me. Now, if that thing is something that doesn't matter, they're just insecure about not wanting me to know that they don't know, I understand that, but it makes me uneasy. In our world that's already uneasy. So I find that the best thing we can do for our clients is really be upfront, but let them know if and when things change, we're going to talk about it. And if and things pivot, we're going to talk about it. If you have a status ending, maybe we do, maybe I do very much recommend let's just file the renewal under it all just in case.
Yeah.
Because if you're transitioning from one status to another to like, let's say residency, the last thing you want to do is something to change. You didn't file that renewal.
Yeah.
And now you're kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place. So unfortunately, it means more money, more time, more resources. But I think that's our job. Here's the most conservative approach. Here's the most likely approach.
Yeah.
How would you like to proceed?
And you said the cost of immigrating is financially, other than the mental stress of it, is increasing a lot exponentially.
To the fees, and what they're trying to do is trying to penalize normal people.
Yeah.
But I mean, isn't that kind of unfortunately 2020?
Yeah, one of the disturbing things is they want to take some of the fees and give it to ICE. I'm not even sure that's legal. I'm not sure what the rules are exactly, but it's like, what's going on? You can't just take the money and take it there. And along with that, there's word that they're telling USCIS officers they can do overtime by going to work for ICE and stuff. And it's like, dude, we have backlogs here. What's
like
going
the church.
on?
It's like the church coming in to tell your kids at public school, what religion they should be, right? These things should be separate.
Definitely, it's very disturbing. It's a benefits agency, but although the USCIS isn't internally looked at as a benefits agency. Actually, right now as we're speaking, there is a House committee talking about the burnout that's going on, the low morale in DHS, and I'm going to catch that and send a link to everybody once I watch it. But they know internally, the union now he's the second in command at DHS, Cuccinelli, but he was head of USCIS. They gave a notice out saying that they're really frustrated. This guy's going to ruin immigration. Even internally, they're really frustrated about that.
On that note, we know whether it's USCIS or DHS, even CBP, these people didn't go into this work because they're alt-right, anti-immigrant crusaders. They wanted a steady job. They wanted to be able to have vacation, health care, all the things you and I are looking for. So all of a sudden, if you learn the system, and then all of a sudden say you have to relearn it, who likes that? Especially if you've been at a job for a long time. I was just in an interview this morning where the officer and I were lamenting how here in LA, especially in the particular LOS, they went from the bundle system to an off-the-top system. Mm-hmm. So they're no longer doing the bundle system where each officer gets their bundle for the day and they work through that. Now it's, you're done, okay, take it off the top. Oh, you're done with this one, take it off the top. And she was very candid and said everybody hates it because it rewards people to work slower. Mm-hmm. Because if you're working slower, you do less work because you're not going to take the top. And everybody else working twice as hard, they're doing twice as many cases. Yeah. And she was frustrated. And we talked about, how when she could retire and those types of things. Yeah. And so that burnout, I mean, we all know that's real. And if the people who are doing your bidding all of a sudden are, maybe not talking about not doing it anymore. Yeah.
Well, I'm going to talk about Department of State. What's going on there? And CBP is seeing attrition like crazy too. Their numbers are generally going down.
Well, again, it's in the internet age. It's hard to hide what's actually happening. Yeah. And so, how are you going to be someone? Maybe your military background. Maybe you're not. A lot of people are first generation immigrants themselves. Maybe their families from somewhere else. And you hear these horrendous stories of what they're being told to do. And these officers are saying, well, I was just doing what I was told. Yeah. Who wants to go into that, right? Yeah. I want to go into it where I can ride a horse on the border and be in a tank and,
there is a security aspect to it that they respect, but then where's security draw a line and we're just being inhumane? It's a hard position to be in. And a lot of people are just like, you know what, I don't want to do it. But the problem is, what's left over is the cream of that crop.
Well, and we're seeing this with, law enforcement or just kind of people in authority in general. When you sift out maybe the people that have a moral compass, who's left? Yeah,
exactly. Now, there was this big article that came out that there's so many people using the K-1, the marriage visa process for being child brides in, and USCIS jumped immediately, like a month later, they changed some of their procedures internally. So if you have a foreign national that's coming, the age is inappropriate, you got to do some extra work and watch out for that. Just a quick note, USCIS issued a memo on that. Also, there was a case that came out in, I think EOI or BIA about, like, if you have bad moral character, if you have DUIs, it's bad. And in the case, if I remember reading, it was specific for, cancellation removal or something like that. Mm-hmm. But quickly afterward, USCIS issued their own good moral character determination that applies for all adjudications, and 2 DUIs is going to be bad. So that's a big shift that's going to happen that we're going to see it's happening there. But along with that, we're seeing a bunch of increased litigation. At this point, litigation is a way to answer denials, especially with naturalization and delays in naturalization, which has been happening. And so that's a big issue that's happening. We're going to get to federal courts and stuff like that. But
which they hate.
Yeah.
What a waste of time for them.
Yeah.
Like, just make a decision. And what happens when you file these mandamuses or these federal? They make a call, and then guess what? The case is resolved to the point where attorneys aren't even messing around with waiting anymore because they know it's not going to get it done.
Yeah, no more AO appeals are going to go down. I mean, they're going to change, and I put this in the Immigration to Watch Facebook page. They're changing the internal dynamics of the AAO, so it's even more one-sided. But another thing that happened with student visa, so it was a pretty nasty year, but there was an unlawful presence memo for student visas where they said if you violate your student visa, you immediately are accumulating unlawful presence days. That's still enjoined. It's been enjoined for a long time, and so a lot of colleges are pushing back on that too, because we're seeing an attack on the student visa aspect. We talked about earlier CBP blocking, PhD students are coming in, and DOS canceling visas. But we're seeing a huge drop in enrollment for the second year in a row, and F1 student visas are subsidizing American college students.
I was just going to say, do the math. Do the math. Think about how much it is for you as an in-state, then do it out-of-state. That pales in comparison what an international student's paying. And schools have been doing this forever to balance their budget, taking in more international students. So you're absolutely right that here again is the collateral damage that this anti-immigrant kind of let's blame brown people and let's just kind of go, scorched earth. But you're having beacons of progress in our country that have helped build our economy, have helped build our identity, that we're now undercutting them. And once you start messing with people's and entities' money, that's when the issues really come to the surface.
So the colleges always have a lot of support, and they're the judges might be alma mater. So it's like this stuff happens. It's like the F1 student visa is one of those. It's like the anti-immigration crowd has a big problem with F1s is that it's duration of status, that people do overstay on the F1. That is a problem. And one thing I've seen more and more is because students have to go through the CVIS system with ICE. If they fall out of status, they're keeping better track of following up and showing up for their doorstep.
And that's a post 9/11 attribution, as I understand it, that they made it CVIS be running by ICE at that point because the hijackers, a bunch of them were student visa holders at one point. And so again, to your point, if we need to make sure nobody slips through the cracks. The immigration cops are the one that run the whole thing.
Yeah.
We know plenty of people that get a knock on the door or something show up in the mail because they've been out of status. So it's just we're going after the least likely to do things.
Yeah.
Student visas are, look at the statistics for startups. Look at the statistics for who's coming in to try to build something as opposed to coming in to try to take something away.
Yeah. And along with that, one thing, I haven't had this problem happen, but it worries me, is if you have people who are on STEM OPT and then they stop working and they get married and want to adjust, I'm always worried, did they get an absentia order? Maybe they got an NTA because they didn't tell the school that they stopped or something, like notify the school. I do EOIR FOIAs for them beforehand. They come back right after a month with their name search to make sure there's no NTA or there wasn't an absentia order that could be nasty. But that's something that's going to be a worry with these kind of student visas.
Well, and what John's speaking to is the idea that one part of the system is doing something that would essentially create a roadblock for another part of the system. But then they don't notify anybody, and so rather than finding that out at the 1 yard line, at the last mile of the race, you're trying to get ahead of it, which is wise because again, STEM OPT people can be on it for a long time.
Yeah.
But if somebody somewhere within a system said, you're out, and an NTA was issued but it never went anywhere.
I think with STEM OPT you're supposed to report to your school constantly. A lot of these students don't report. They change jobs. They don't report.
Oh yeah.
I think schools do orientation, filling on what to do, but I'm constantly seeing student visa holders. It's too complicated for them 100%. To understand this stuff.
And I mean, think about you're probably a small team at a big school that has 15, 20,000 international students you have to worry about. They're 9 to 5 workers. They're not, coming in on the weekend at that school in that, international student office. So again, it's just, there's already a lot of pitfalls. We're now creating landmines.
Yeah, and student visa holders don't hire lawyers a lot of times, and it's like, when I talk to them on this, you don't have to have a lawyer for this, but you need someone on your team watching out because one mistake is it's a domino effect of deportation and permanent ban or 10-year bar or some garbage like that.
And it's never going to be when you don't have anything to show for it. It's going to be after you've built something.
Yeah.
It's going to be after you're in a relationship. It's going to be after something that you have far more to lose.
I'm glad you said that. It's like, it just highlighted in my head. Yeah, you have this degree, you're going to have this big job. You're married, you're in love, you have kids. It's like, it's catastrophic.
You call us because you're worried about an investment going through. Lo and behold, you overstayed a 994, there's a expedite, or there's a NTA or something, or an absentia order, and you're like, You know, we have that conversation a lot with our clients where we have to let them know something that they had no idea exists, and that before they can do what they actually want to do, you have to go back and fix something.
Yeah. Or they on a JVs have a 2-year requirement, and they're like, we're about to just, you have 2. I didn't even know what a 2-year requirement was.
My attorney said, it's fine.
Yeah. So one quick note is they've been sending out these no match letters for Social Security office. That's increasing. I don't do too much I-9 enforcement kind of stuff, but that's something to be, there's a bunch of tools online to talk to you, discuss how to deal with these no match letters and stuff like that.
On that note, from the standpoint of like in-house counsel and the things that a lot of companies routinely have somebody in-house that's like their immigration person. I just had a call yesterday from somebody that was referred to me from a third party that I know. And, she's an attorney in-house, has like 50 employees, and a good amount of them are H-1B, and they're for the life of them are having a terrible time with what? H-1B transfers, right? They get some nasty RFE, basically.
I got to call it a denial one of those yesterdays. Yeah.
Trying to gut it, and now the attorneys they've been working with, they say, oh no, pack his bags, he's got to go. He already left the last good job. They said it was going to be fine.
Yeah. Yeah, it's bad. It's bad. You're here for 5 years, 6 years, and you do H-1B transfer. That gets. I mean, that's a good transition to H-1B actually. So the announcement came that the electronic H-1B registration process is happening. At first, it was kind of positive because the clients have to pay all this money to file a full H-1B package. If it's not accepted, then it's out. So they have this $10 sign-up program. But the negatives to me are one is all these people are going to sign up for that. So it's going to be all these people who are going to get chosen are not going to do it. They're like, we'll throw our hat in $10 in.
It's a DV lottery, right? It's like, just sign up. It's no big deal.
Yeah.
Like it's not expensive.
And the other aspect is, like, all these people are going to sign up and then hire a lawyer, but then once they took a lottery position, they're going to realize they don't have a good case for H-1B. So actually the numbers of the actual my guess is it's going to drop dramatically on this season, in addition to all the mistakes that are going to happen.
Wouldn't be surprising that was potentially the plan all along.
So nasty. But, there's firms that their whole business plan is H-1B. So there's some immigration firms right now that are scrambling. It's going to be huge financial hit for a lot of firms.
Big time. And, I mean, it's a testament to, again, if you're an attorney watching this, you have to cross-pollinate. You can't go all in on one. Even if you're really good at O's and P's or E2s, you have to realize all it takes is a lunatic and an anti-immigrant cabinet, and things change on a dime. So if you're not learning through this time that you need to be able to do a little bit of everything to keep yourself afloat for maybe the things that are bread and butter, you set yourself up for being the next H-1B attorney who's now thinking, oh my God, do I have to start doing PI cases? You know what I mean?
So the niche, I'm really into having a narrowed down niche as much as possible, but you kind of have to have 2 niches in case there's a fallback on one.
Or at least be aware enough to where, I think from a cash flow revenue stream, and sometimes you'll take a case from a client that is out of your wheelhouse that ends up leading into your wheelhouse, right? It's almost like create those relationships so that long term they come back to you over and over again for their family and in their network, and then maybe it falls back into your bread and butter. Yeah,
definitely. So Department of Labor is having stuff that on the H-2A farm workers program, the average hike in their wages went up 57%. So that's less inclined for the farmers to bring in. It's more pressure on them to do it. There was a stat in Forbes that said employers have paid $5 billion in H-1B visa fees since 1999. These are these training fees that just who knows what happens with that money.
Probably goes to ICE.
I mean, they're doing increased presence or coming into offices to check things out. IT consulting industry is hardest hit by H-1B denials, leading to a bunch of lawsuits that are happening. So I think H-1B, the process is on the courts now. And it goes this way, that way. They settle a lot of times. I interviewed this year Attorney Jonathan Wazen, a former oil attorney, AO attorney, and he is trying to getting groups of H-1Bs to do class action larger ones. Because what happens is, we talked about with regards to mandamus cases, they just discreetly approve the case and let it go. By trying to force the issue so like judges see this, it goes public knowledge that they do crazy things. I mean, if there's violations of H-1B and fraud, I understand. Actually today there was a Twitter account for USCIS went on a 5-page rant about, tweet rant about like, we're catching the fraud, this and that. And I'm like, okay, there's fraud, get that. But there's a lot of good cases that are not fraud, and they're just, hurting decent people. But talking about hurting decent people, moving to asylum, we talked about the issue with the forms and stuff. USCIS proposes more effective and efficient, I like the word effective and efficient use, for a work authorization request for asylum, which means no more 30-day processing that was in the statute, the regulation. But also they're going to be not giving EADs to people who do certain violations or have certain history involved with EAD. So work authorization is harder, and that's their effort to try to decrease the amount of asylum applications that are happening. There has been a huge jump in asylum cases, so I can understand there's probably fraud engulfed in that. But there was a statistic that came out by Track, which does this stuff. There's a chart they did, it's just crazy, about which courts in the last 5 years get approval and less approvals. LA was a mixed bag. San Francisco, New York, a lot more approvals. Georgia was like 0 approvals. And Attorney Charles Cook said, like, do not file asylum cases and
just move.
Yeah, there's no point. I mean, if you're an immigrant, going to the South is like the last place you want to go to, it seems.
Which is so funny because these are communities, and this is the American story, communities that seemingly are look the least like people from around the world end up flourishing, right? And this is why you have different ethnic communities around the country that, being Iranian American, Persian American, being Mexican American, married to a Persian American woman. We know that there's a big Persian population in Atlanta. You would never know it, but it's because you have cousins and it's out there. Or Somalis and Ethiopians. We get a lot of that in the news these days, and it's a testament to the idea that the thing that the United States needs are people that want to come and work and build. That's always been the immigrant story.
Yeah.
And so if you're decimating you're cutting off your nose to spite your face. If you're known as an anti-immigrant region, the things that are ailing you that could be fixed by more immigration, it's exacerbating another problem. But isn't that politics in 2020, that people hold on to these relics or these talking points while their 401ks are being gutted, their health care is going through the roof, their kids can't get jobs, and yet they're, build this, build that, and it's...
I mean, they're bragging that the defense budget went up to the $700 billion or something like that, how much they're spending, but this money is going to the big companies. That trickles down to you as an American. First of all, how much security that buys. When they have like $20 toilet seats that are really $2, it's all going to graft. So much, like our actual budget, how much money we're actually using for prop stuff, probably a third or less than that. A lot of it just goes to first class tickets for flying places, big banquets where you have shrimp, top shrimp or caviar.
Paying the lobbyists to make sure it keeps coming.
So it's like these talking points, the headline, we spent all this much in the military. It's not the military, it's special interests that get that money. And the same with immigration, they think like we're stopping these people. It's like, no, you're hurting yourself, and you're an analogy that you said. Now they're also doing increased focus on social media posts, especially for refugee applicants, but everywhere. They said they're going to use Google Translate to do this stuff, which is problematic because that's not official translation.
Can you imagine your whole life being built on Google Translate?
Yeah.
And imagine a language that is not Latin-based, for example.
Yeah.
And we've been there where somebody's translation or a bad translation or a bad interpretation is a case. It turns on a dime. It's surgery with it's open heart surgery with landscaping tools.
Yeah.
Right.
I had an interview this year, 2019, with Mandy Fearbacker. She was an U.S. embassy officer in China, and she's a Chinese background. She speaks it fluently. She saw there was mistakes in translation that were causing misrepresentation, fraud claims. She's like, no, that term you're using is incorrect. That's why they're responding like that. So she helped fix that up. And then with regards to just social media, and WhatsApp is an app that foreign people especially use. And they send they're in these group apps where people just post whatever they want. You got to have your content be very careful. I had a call from a guy who was from an Arab country, and someone sent him a torture video, someone in a group they didn't even know. And see, if he saw that and said, you watch torture videos, denied F1 student visa, out, expedited removal, what are you going to do? And he's like, I don't know those torture videos, idiots posted here, I don't even know who this person is. You delete that app, don't join these groups, be very cautious if you're part of these groups of what it could do.
And that's one of those things that we have to be mindful of. Just because it's not happening now doesn't mean it won't happen. So put yourself in the situation where, maybe you're being anal, you may be being overly cautious, but if your client's life is dictated by a CPP random search of their Facebook posts or WeChat, just delete it all. Get a burner phone and don't worry about it because it's just not worth it. And it's a testament to, stuff like child porn and those things. Yes, we want those people to be caught, and we've seen that through years of CBP secondary inspection and where are you coming from, and do you meet these types of class, do you look like these types of people that we see routinely and pull up the laptop. But for a kid who's in all these different social media, It's just you're asking yourself for a problem. And what if you get somebody that just wants to find a reason? And they say, oh, exactly. I found something. And that's it.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. One thing that also goes along with the immigration aspect, there was a matter of HGG that was adopted a decision by the AEO pushing USCIS on TPS. So TPS is this big ongoing issue of how they're interpreting this stuff, especially because in the Ninth Circuit, and I think some other circuit, Sixth, they like found Ohio. TPS as admission, which is a wonderful thing for a lot of clients. But others didn't. So USCIS says, other than those, we're not going to consider it admission. That's our standing line. We're going to stand on that. But interestingly, there was a court, I think in San Francisco, UOIR, accepted the fact that TPS was a readmission, so it canceled out a previous unlawful presence time. And we'll see how that happens. USCIS is not going to accept that, but that's probably going to get appealed, and we're going to see. But that's a battleground, how they interpret TPS, and they're still extending this kind of stuff. The MS TPS was just extended. They're still pushing this stuff through, so we'll see what happens with that. But then the other side, there's DACA, which is not as strong as TPS. There are people filing DACA sometimes saying it's considered lawful entry. One of our colleagues said they had a case to prove that the USCIS accepted as admission, but it's not really. So we'll see how the litigation on that happens.
Well, and I know that that's part of the advocacy hat that we all wear, that this is by the law a denial. However, maybe we argue, and that's what we're supposed to do. If you remember, when we were first starting out in 2013, DOMA fell, Defense of Marriage Act, that basically allowed for same-sex marriages to be recognized federally, that allowed for same-sex green card spousal adjustments. And so I remember hearing people would file them leading up to that and get denied, but want to basically go through the administrative procedures, appeal it, etc., to basically say why this should be the case. And so potentially, as was the case with TPS and now with DACA, maybe this is the strategy. Let's file it, let's get a denial, let's go up, or maybe we can't get somebody to approve us. So litigation, and if you're an attorney here and you're not donating to a handful of organizations that money goes directly into these lawyers' pockets who are fighting for all of us, you're not doing what you need to be doing. Yeah,
definitely got to support this stuff. And I'm trying to create my own traders association and do these kind of lawsuits. That's the frontier that we're working on.
100%.
I'm not a lawyer that lives lawsuits, so I'm like, I'll create the organization that does.
Well, and with any luck, it's an election year, we get a new president, we do get to swing the other way. But I don't think we'll ever forget what this time period felt like. And the rest of our careers will be mindful and cautious that all it takes is somebody who's going to lose to go after immigrants and to go after brown people and poor people.
Plus, these memos are in to undo the employees that are there. There's judges. He was an astronomical amount of judges that were placed. So there's he'll leave if he leaves now or 4 years from now. But there's a minefield of stuff that's still there, and the lawsuits, even that's a lawsuit, that's a minefield itself, is the way to deal with that. Now, part of the harshness, they're pushing now for O&P visas. When you get these consultation letters, it's a negative one. Before, that was it. But now they're saying, the agency has to submit it to USCIS, which is like a really messed up kind of thing they're doing. They're shutting down international field offices. The one in Moscow closed down. There's like 5 of them left or something like that.
That's
Guatemala, maybe 1. I'm actually going to be doing my first direct filing for Guatemala.
I think Bangkok is like the big Asian region one from Australia all the way up.
It's a shame. This is like there's a lot of families in Germany and Frankfurt. They're shutting that one down that do direct filing. It's good to have these offices there. By closing them down, it's just a shame.
We've all been in a job where there's poor leadership, and you're trying to do your job, but you realize you can't because leadership at the top has set you up to fail. This is another example of that we're all operating in a system that is making it abundantly more difficult.
And speaking of making it difficult, EB-5 price hike happened. How much is it now? Like 900 and 1.5 or something like that? Or something?
It didn't go up quite half, but I think it's like 40 plus.
Yeah, so we'll see what the numbers. I mean, China backlog was so bad that the numbers of EB-5 filings were coming down from there. I imagine if you're that rich, it doesn't really matter. But you have a lot of people on the cusp who don't have that much money. I mean, that much money, $1 million, $2 million, a lot of money. But they just want to do it to do it. And I always have consultations with these people and say, listen, it's not, you don't have enough money to be doing a risky gamble like this. It's like it's going to the stock market. Your money can disappear.
It's like buying a house with everything that you have under your name. What if there's an additional cost at the end of the day? What are you going to do?
You go into foreclosure over a $10 bill? It's like crazy.
Exactly.
So that's that. And then the Department of Labor is changing the methodology for certifying UNT visas. I don't handle those. I wasn't sure why the Department of Labor is doing this, but they say there's their DOL is getting involved in that.
Well, maybe with labor, that if you're filing as the victim of some type of labor crime, that those are certifications.
Exactly, yeah. And then the Department of Labor also is phasing out the old iCert system. There's this new system that they installed without telling everybody, and did a video on that. So that was weird. Now, interestingly, the F2A filing chart became current, which is magic.
I was just telling you before we went live that I had a case that was F2A. I have a few cases in the hopper right now pending interview, and maybe it's a testament that you shock the system so much, people get out of line, people give up hope.
Yeah.
So we go from a backlog of 2 years since I think 2013 to all of a sudden for the last 4 months it's been current.
And they're saying it looks like it's going to stay current for a while. And it's like, dude, that's kind of weird because there's a lot of marriage cases, a lot of so.
It's a testament to, they tell us a lot of stuff, but you have to look at the numbers.
Yeah.
And if all of a sudden there's more visas available for spouses and children of legal permanent residents, it's kind of like, how? Because across the board, Mexico included, Philippines, etc., these impacted countries, it just feels like, oh, okay, are we swapping out visas from one entity to another to make sense of this?
Or DOS at the embassy interview, they're denying them, or like with CNC.YRS, they're finding bogus affidavit of support issues, so not issuing that visa number.
And is that going back to the pile?
Yeah.
And it's a testament to this world is a closed pie. If you have less pie somewhere, that means there's more pie elsewhere.
Yeah.
And it's, I guess, like you said, a silver lining in all of these awful things, as is TPS adjustment, right?
Yeah.
As is being able to continue to renew your DACA, even though we're unsure of how DACA is going to play out.
That's why if you have DACA kids, even if it's not 6 months left, just keep refiling these extensions.
It seems like the rule of thumb for people that do a lot of this is, within that, you're in that 15-month, refile. If that means that you're refiling every 6 months, well, what happens if it goes away? You've bought yourself 2 additional years.
Yeah. And don't let it fall out of status. I think if it falls out of status, you can't extend, right?
So right now, it's one of these things where they say they won't, but I think it's a case by case.
Yeah, I had somebody who was like, well, I'll just do it later after. I'm like, no, do it now, do it now. So when I give them bad advice that you can't do that. And last note on USCIS kind of stuff, which is something that just drives me crazy, this so-called 90-day rule. USCIS did update the policy manual. We'll talk about consular processing and their interpretation of it. This so-called 90-day rule, if you do some inconsistent act with your status in 90 days, that's misrepresentation or fraud. USCIS said it says non-binding on USCIS officers. So I still see people on posting that say USCIS has a 90-day rule. It doesn't. They take a case-by-case basis. In the West Coast, I have not seen this be a problem. I frequently file within 9 days because people change their minds or whatever. There's a BIA case that says BIA case says that if you're doing immediate relative kind of cases, we're going to let it slide. So that's still law, you know. So people get really scared of this 90-day rule. It is scary. If you could wait 90 days or if the people, people change their mind. It's not even that you wait 90 days. If you enter, the next day you decide to stay. So I have cases where people are visiting their boyfriend or girlfriend in the U.S. CEP says, this is the last time you do it. You're never going to go back. Well, then I go, okay, like then we were going to get married. We're going to do consular processing. We're going to get married next year. Okay, well, we'll just move up our plan. So that stuff is true. There's reality to it. Hopefully I had a return ticket to show that they were going to return all that kind of stuff. But that really bothers me. And one thing I want to get money together to sue is to get rid of the stupid 90-day rule. So, I mean, with USCIS, one thing you could challenge that at UIR or something like that. But when you go to Department of State, which we're going to talk about right now, they've been updating their interpretation of 90-day rule. It seems like every 3 months. And it's like, because they get pushed back with saying how stupid they had to change it harder, then they had made it more flexible because it was so rigid they did it. And the most recent one, they have this language that says, here it's good, it says, it does not automatically mean the alien's intentions were misrepresented. So this is an update they put recently. But one interpretation they have to show someone did do misrepresentation is if like you do marriage, you're doing consular processing, and then part of the I-130 bona fides, they had a long-term lease sign, like a 1-year lease potentially, which is really stupid because in California, if you're going to stay at a house for more than 15 days, you have to be part of the lease. So if your boyfriend or girlfriend is coming to the U.S., stays with you on a B1, B2 for a month, they have to be part of the lease. And when a lawyer tells them we need more bona fides to add them to the lease, and then you tell them to do consular processing, do it by the book, that could potentially become a problem with consular processing. I don't see that issue happening at Canada, Japan, Northern Europe kind of stuff. But if you're China and India, you got to be very careful about this kind of 90-day rule. That's where they'll get you because they just treat them differently over there.
Oh yeah, and they assume so much of intent that's not there. Mm-hmm. So it's almost one of those things too where look at a case that may fall into this space and look at it with that lens of, could I interpret any of this as being like a negative fact.
Yeah.
And if I can, then you need to prepare your client for it, because oftentimes you get a single question asked of you at the consulate to explain something. And if you don't know why they're asking you and you just kind of respond, oh yeah, it's just what we had, then maybe that's the difference. And so yeah, we have to be cautious of everything. That's what this administration has done. So like you said, if it kind of inconsistently applied and we're unsure how it plays out, you being very cautious is not a bad thing. If anything, it's, fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me, right? We have to be aware of this stuff. And because they're trying to read tea leaves in your actions, that can mean 1,000 things.
Yeah.
I just had an officer, although this is stateside and not the consulate, I just had an officer ask, do you both have house keys? Show me them. And he said if he doesn't have them, that's a massive issue.
Yeah.
And the first question I have is, don't a lot of people like go in through their garage and then put in a combination?
Yeah.
Maybe you guys don't lock your house. Maybe you have a hide key.
Well, like I had this one on a K1 adjustment, and they would travel the world for 5 years together. All these tickets. It was a real issue. I didn't go, and the officer's like, yeah, if you didn't have your keys, but like. Me and my wife go out, only one of us brings the keys. So I was the car I was driving. Why bring 2 sets of keys when you're doing that? So like,
100%.
does it make sense? This key thing is such a nitpicky, stupid kind of thing that, like, if they have the key, let it go. But I really want to complain. Like, this is a dumb thing. It's stupid.
It's an arbitrary and ineffective way to prove anything.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, separate them if you have to. Right. That's so much better than this kind of like, oh, if you don't have this random, somewhat outdated thing. A lot of places are going keyless. A lot of places are.
A lot of new places, they just is push button, kind of like code when you go
exactly,
in there.
or a key fob or whatever.
Yeah.
And so it's the thing about the consulate though is we don't have access. Their partners don't have access. Oftentimes they're on an island alone. Having gone to this consulate tour in Guadalajara last month, we get this time to talk to people that are at the consulate on the front lines. And you realize, they're up against it as well. You've had many videos with many ex-officers that tell you, at the end of the day, it's a numbers game. Yeah. And if it's too complicated to have to explain to me, and I see a long line, and I'm trying to get to lunch, it's easier for me to say denied, 212G or whatnot, come back, or 221G, and all of a sudden, your life's turned upside down because the officer just wasn't,
And, I have like clients sometimes who. And that's why even for tours, you got to talk clients. You ask them a question and they spend 20 minutes talking. That pisses me off. An officer who has 150 cases that they have to deal with in a day, that's the night you're out of here. You got to just learn how to be succinct. And this is like a lawyer this is part of law school, is how to be short and to the point. A lot of time in the U.S., like if you're in college and high school, you try to. They say you have to write 5 pages, so you're trying to find ways to drag something out with 5 pages. But being succinct is the best thing, and that's part of our what we do as lawyers, to practice like, okay, give me a direct answer. Don't go convoluted kind of stuff and tell me about your stories about your last vacation. That's just going to annoy the hell out of the officer. And so that makes a big effect on those kind of things.
Yeah, I mean, this going back to the attorneys watching, if you're not one part a coach, one part a therapist, one part a mind reader, then you haven't been doing this long enough, because we inevitably have to be, because sometimes people are like that for a reason. And we get it out of them and it's like, oh, I'm sorry, I just had this situation happen, so I'm really nervous and I'm just a nervous person. It's like, it's fine, I want you to be you. But at the end of the day, don't answer questions that aren't asked. And if the officer has a question, they'll ask. If they don't, it's because they don't care. But if you're now bringing up some random story that leads to some question, they say, oh, you were at a party. Oh, what'd you do at the party? Drinking, you smoke weed or anything like that. You lend yourself up, as is the case when you get pulled over in the States. Here's what it is. Don't need to say anything else.
License, registration.
Big time.
That's
big
it,
time.
Yeah. So Department of State, the big thing about constant processing is the amount of power the president has, and after the travel ban cases by Supreme Court, the INA 212F says the president can do whatever they want. And so part of the travel ban that happened was a reimagination of the systems that the U.S. has with each country, and seeing how they're going to judge that and making extra security features. So they added a social media handle questionnaire on visa applications, DS260, DS160, all your phone numbers, all email addresses, all that kind of stuff. There's been more than 30,000 people have been blocked from entry, and this is months ago, this number I'm citing. Now, the numbers, it got a little better. They instituted a new system for travel ban in September-ish. So I've been getting cases that are approved right in the spot, visa issued at the spot for Iranian cases, which was like no administrative processing. So it's kind of all over the place. But that was tough. And another thing that they did, part of, I guess, the restructuring of how the Department of State works with foreign countries is the reciprocity charts have changed drastically. So the reciprocity charts are if you go to Visa Reciprocity on the State Department website, it has these procedures there of how to get a document, how it looks, but also has a breakdown of how much the visa fees are, in addition to the regular processing fee, and also how long a visa length is. So we're seeing restructuring of how long e-visas are, for example, or what the fee for an e-visa is. In Australia, I think is the hardest hit. For Australia, I didn't write the price yet. I did a video on it. There are thousands of dollars. Now, if you're a family of 4 doing an E2 from Australia, you might have to pay $10,000 in reciprocity fees. So if you have an e-visa practice that's dominated by Australia, those clients are like $10,000 every time I want to renew.
And to come to build a business, like you're coming to do something positive for the United States. Right,
the concept of reciprocity fees is, even if other countries do it to us, they're stupid. Why do that for an e-visa, especially?
It's funny when we pride ourselves on our capitalistic free market nature, and then build these bombs that exist to completely disincentivize the best and the brightest from moving operations or starting operations in the United States.
But on the positive side, the e-visa program started for E2, especially for New Zealand and Israel, and so that's a big boom. Surprisingly, New Zealand has a lot of people that are going to do that. And Israel, obviously, is a startup hub, so a lot of Israelis are going to take advantage of that program. There's been changes to the visa policy for Cuban citizens. U.S. embassies have been on alert in like Caracas and Venezuela. Obviously in Iraq, that's almost a war over that kind of stuff. Even before that, there was the U.S. had ordered non-essential employees to leave Iraq immediately, essentially all citizens to leave. But the DOS has had other issues. So they for diversity visa lottery, they made it so you have to have your passport ready to go even at the time of filing. Before, people just, a lot of times from countries, they wouldn't have a passport because they don't plan on traveling internationally. They'll get it once they do their DS-260 or something like that. But now it's like you have to have your passport ready at the time of filing, so that's important. Again, these are people who don't hire lawyers, but it's better they do because there can be mess ups.
Well, and with DV lottery, it's kind of one of those things where, it doesn't hurt to try.
Yeah.
And when you're an attorney, it's great because they find you, they're in line, they hire you, kind of get them across the finish line. The problem is they didn't do something the right way early, and then you're
the one. They have a typo on the initial filing. It's like, especially when they're non-English speaking countries.
Or, so you graduated high school? Yeah. All right, do you have the diploma? Oh, no. Okay. Well, you've spent all this time, and now you've gotten your hope up.
Yeah.
Heaven forbid you're here and want to adjust status, and you overstay, you have this pending status, and now there's an issue.
Yeah, definitely. I got a case where a guy got an 01 because some lawyer said he could do it, and so it was an 01 that wasn't a good 01, if you know what I mean. And so this guy, then he came here, and the lawyer told him, "We can do whatever job you want." This lawyer's crazy. I told him to file a lawsuit against him. So he just changed jobs, and so he's out of status, wins the diversity visa lottery, files it, goes to the interview, and then gets a notice of intent to deny. I'm like, well, you completely messed up here. There's a potential misrep and fraud. We could probably get an argument and sue that lawyer or something like that to give you advice wrong, but you should have done constant processing, and maybe it would have happened. But because you decided to do adjustment status yourself, it's easy. Now you got this problem, and now it's like almost September. If you want to do I-24 to send it to the embassy, it's like a mess. So that was like a sad situation that happened there. Now, one thing that's been happening a lot is the issue of who's a citizen and who's not. There was a case where this one woman who was born here, maybe under a diplomatic visa or maybe not, eventually went to join ISIS. She got a passport, but the DOS said, you know what, you don't have a passport. You were born as a diplomat, which means you're not automatically a citizen. But we're also seeing this situation where you have same-sex couples who have children born in vitro fertilization overseas. Constantly DOS saying we're not going to issue the passport because their genes are associated with the foreign national parent or some weird stuff like that. Even though there's Ninth Circuit and Circuit decisions that say, for example, if I'm married to my wife and then I get this, like I'm a foreign person, I marry a U.S. citizen, and then I'm cheating with another foreign person, that kid that's born from the adulterous spouse or adulterous who I'm committing adultery with, that's going to be a citizen under that. It's like this crazy kind of scenarios that happen. But the U.S. keeps getting sued, and judges are like, dude, we've made the decision.
Yeah.
These are U.S. citizen-born children automatically. And so it's crazy. I think the head of the U.S., Pompeo, right now, is a Christian fundamentalist. Even on the Department of State's website, they had him on the homepage saying a Christian leader, which is like, dude, the Department of State shouldn't be saying this kind of stuff. But right now his push for war with Iran, he's a kind of a messianic Christian that wants end days and stuff like that to come. So that's the person leading the helm of U.S. foreign policy. And it's like, dude, if people are going to die with these kind of people at the head. But I can see that decision making coming in when they're attacking LGBT community like that through the State Department.
And that's what it seems like where the animus is coming from, where the overall reasons why we're spending so much time and energy on this type of stuff.
Yeah.
It's just because it's like, oh, it's identity politics, and you're obviously unhappy with yourself, but you're going down with the ship with your identity or your ideologies, and for what? To ruin some person's life, to make it's just a testament to, again, poor leadership is really a cancer, and it fills the body, it fills everybody else that it touches, and this is why who we have leading us and who we have in these positions, it's important. So if you didn't think voting mattered, welcome to 2020, where
I still think voting matters, but
very true, very true. But that even with your own
effect. Well, I mean, because Pompeo, these people are part of the system. With one comes goes. I think this podcast, talking to people on a one-on-one basis, you and Meyer, I think that's the most I always talk about the community, because they're the system. But I mean, one avenue is voting, but I think this machine is on its way. It's like churning, and it's hard to do it. And Trump the stuff he's doing is even more than I didn't think he'd have that kind of intelligent people with him to be able to institute it. Steve Miller, as dastardly as a person, as negatively as they think about him, really masterful in what he does. You know, art of war, you have to respect the rival. And so I'm like, okay, I respect this guy. He really spent time. Jeff Sessions and his team spent a lot of years seeing where the issue is. Center for Immigration Studies really has spent time. I don't know where the amount of hatred towards immigrants happens to have the energy to do that.
Oh yeah.
But they really did their time. They know what they're doing. So
you were a nerd in high school with Steven, right? I mean, he's a Santa Monica
he's local
guy.
down the street guy. Yeah.
I know people that grew up with him, and they say the same thing. So it's a testament to going back to the idea of voting. It's just when it's tie goes to the runner, and your decision, you get to decide the umpire. Well, then that umpire and whether they have any type of moral compass or moral fiber, or more importantly, whether they're easily persuaded by maybe more cavalier and interesting people around them.
Yeah.
Maybe that's what it's about. It's like your parents always didn't worry about you, they worried about the friends you were with.
Yeah.
Similarly, maybe we don't worry about this person, but the company, the council, the cabinet they keep, oh yeah, these are a bunch of fear-mongering, anti-immigrant bigots. Yeah, we should probably be concerned, right?
Now, I mean, speaking of, cavalier attitudes, moving to ICE now. And I was putting these articles together, what happened last year, every report from ICE has been super unpatriotic, un-American, un-freedom kind of stuff. So they're doing these things where, for example, they're checking people's Facebook accounts, hacking them, making false accounts for people to get friends to read them. They're using spy tools to listen to people on their phones. They're using the Patriot Act to detain people. So there's one guy who's going to get deported by ICE, so he's going to move. But they're using the Patriot Act to hold him to indefinite detention through immigration. They're putting these NTA notices out that are incorrect. They're just holding people extra. They don't need to. There's STEM OPT ICE inspections that are happening. The raid happened in Mississippi where they arrested all these immigrants, but the employers are all willy-nilly. It's fine. ICE releases 18 U.S. citizens wrongfully detained near the border. They're mining driver's license databases. So all this, like in 1984 dystopian kind of stuff is coming through ICE. And I keep saying, listen, ICE people work for you. You think you're attacking immigrants, you're setting a turnkey totalitarian system, so when the next crazy person comes to lead us, they go, okay, we practice this stuff on the internet, on the immigrants, just like, in Nazi Germany, they practiced this stuff on, it might have been the, anarchists or the communists or the people that are, handicapped and stuff. Then they turn on the Jews, and essentially they turn on the Germans themselves. You're creating a system that's turnkey totalitarianism with these systems. It's not worth our liberty and the American dream, American life, American spirit to institute these kind of systems. And all these should be sued and stopped. But I think that immigrants really a test ground because they have no defense. And even when I see people go through the immigration process, eventually naturalize, they're so annoyed with the process. They're like, you know what? I'm over it. Like, I don't want to go back and advocate. I'm a citizen now. I just want to get married, have a kid, and
just
get all this stuff.
Be the ultimate American dream, left alone.
Yeah.
I just want to be left alone so that I can go about my life.
Yeah.
And you're absolutely right. This turnkey authoritarianism, where it's kind of like, same with the engineers and the people writing the code and creating these systems. It's just like, I guess I guess the paycheck is worth it. I guess the dividend is worth it.
Yeah.
But you're likely not raised in a world that was like this. The fact that you don't think that this is 2 clicks away from you being on the end of that bullseye, it's so naive and completely unrealistic to not think that if you build the infrastructure, that somehow they're not going to use the infrastructure against you. Yeah. And this is, like you said, 1984, every movie we grew up on where all of a sudden the protagonist, everything turns on him or her.
Yeah.
And it's, this is why when we do see people defect and quit and then, basically be a whistleblower and tell all, it shocks the consciousness, because this is not what either the Constitution, the Bill of Rights says. This is also not what we see every day. What you and I, what normal people see every day, is everybody just trying to get by. Do no harm, go about their life, follow the rules. All of this is trying to villainize people simply because they don't look a certain way.
And the reality is ICE has more than enough people that are undocumented that they can just pick up like this, where they don't need to create secret systems to track our phones or IDs.
Oh, yeah.
So there is a backwards way that's intentional. There's no way there's not. There's more thought behind it for these citizens, not
yes.
So that's scary. And then other thing is that ICE has done is writing these fake schools and fake colleges to catch people. That's another reason you need to have immigration lawyer. Be like, listen, if the school says come here, you don't have to go to school, then you shouldn't go there. And I tell people who are trying to change the status and are looking at schools, I'm like, make sure it's a real school. Make sure you have to show up. Make sure you're graded. If they tell you some garbage or not, leave. Go somewhere else. If you see whether your classmates are coming to school or not, doesn't matter. Leave. It's not a legit school. And because some of these, their school, they had some videos that came out that the counselor was saying, yeah, it's pretty much fake, and they got that on tape. But there's ones like that are somewhat on the board.
A little bit more gray area. And think about it. We're in an era of where online schools have exploded.
Yeah.
And you have companies that realize we save money by not having a brick and mortar and books and stuff like that. We can do everything online. And so it makes sense. And if you're from a country that's very advanced, maybe having everything online and not coming in person is standard
normal,
for you. Yeah, the classic saying of it, if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. This is a classic case, and whoever's watching this or listening, immigration is not easy. If you think it is, it's because you're probably misunderstanding it. Talk to somebody.
Yeah.
We are in an area where you can get 10 free consultations in a day, every day for a week.
Yeah.
Do a consensus, do your homework. Because this is not a car accident case. This is not reviewing a trust or a will. This is your life. This is the life of your family, the people you love. And again, sometimes these things happen down the line. And we see it with adjustment or NATS cases where people maybe were at fake universities and they thought that was behind them, and then all of a sudden they get asked, oh, give me a couple of names of your old professors. And the client says, oh, wow, that was like 10 years ago, I didn't think it would come up. And now all of a sudden, not only is the NATS being denied or maybe get annoyed, but now they're maybe reopening a green card case because they think there was fraud.
And NATS is such a minefield, and that's the biggest thing. I see people filing NATS and they call me and like, oh, I didn't know that was a problem. I don't know this. I'm like, yeah, that's why you at least have a consultation with a lawyer. You don't have to hire me. I tell people who call me for NATS, I'm like, we'll talk. It's better you have a lawyer, but it's not mandatory. I just need to go through your life history, your immigration history, to see if there's any red flags to tell you in. Because then you go there and then you get deported. They're paying attention to that case again. It's nasty. So
this fake school. If you think the government isn't out to get people, read the fake school stories. Understand what's going on. These are people who paid a good, hard-earned money to be duped.
Yeah.
And then now they have this on their record forever. And these are not old people. These are young people whose lives have now been negatively impacted.
And then just going again, like ICE, like there's so many easy catching things that you don't need to go through the hoops of creating a fake school, a fake identity.
Are you this bored with going after normal people who are undocumented that you need to create TV and movie-like scenarios?
Yeah.
If that's it, then don't be an ICE officer. Go get another job, because we don't need you creating these elaborate systems to ruin people's lives and be like, oh, law and order.
It's kind of, bureaucracies have to justify their existence and their funding. So the funding for a program like this probably costs a lot of money, and so okay, they'll do that. They'll hire more, and I'll be a bigger boss because I have more people I'm managing and stuff. So you need to find, because Trump wants to hire more ICE officers, you got to find something to do with them. And it's easier to do a fake school than to go out and do police work that's dangerous.
Or actually investigate maybe real fraud.
It's work. Investigating is hard. You work all day and you go nowhere. That's investigating. And then your boss says, why don't you get anywhere? Like, well, because investigating is hard, then you look bad. But, oh, create a fake school, have them come to us. We'll catch people. A lot of the ones that are just doing it that should be caught. That's us.
If you know anybody that is within this system, the amount of information you know, you could write books, you could do tell-alls, you could do all this stuff. We all have a line in the sand, know where that line is on when it's no longer okay to do what you're doing.
Yeah.
And if I'm working for ICE and I'm just trying to go about my day and we come up with this scheme, it's like, yeah, I'm going to look for a different job.
It's like catching kids, really, like
100%.
And so now going to the organization of the immigration system, it's been a massive turnover, and that's just the part of the Trump administration. Constantly is new. It's a revolving chair of people. But we had John Kelly. I think he was the DHS head for some time, became chief of staff. As soon as he left, he joined the board of one of the largest facilities for detaining migrant kids, and that was just like unbelievable.
Have a little tact, right?
Wait 2 weeks at least.
Yeah, there you go.
And then we have, it's interesting, Trump named former Obama's Border Patrol person the head of ICE. I think he left too, but it was like, okay, Mark Morgan was the name. I think he's head of ICE now. And then ICE union lost his bid to review overtime policy determination. So again, they're hitting themselves out too. ICE employees can't get as much overtime. EOIR has been the nastiest, where judges are quitting. American Bar Association said it's on the brink of collapse. The union is being fought to be decertified. And then Department of Homeland Security, people are quitting in mass too, so that's being underfunded. There was this one ambassador from some South American country that was caught hot mic that was saying, yeah, the U.S. 10 years ago when I was working with them was this organization, but now it's like it's worthless organization. Yeah. Everything is run through the Pentagon now for security overseas, and as well as the CIA pretty much. So it's like the Department of State is just like
it's
a
like a puppet org or a shell, yeah.
Yeah, which is stupid. And then Homeland Security, Kirstjen Nielsen resigned. I think after they put Cuccinelli, who left, and then somebody else came. Kevin McKeelan resigned as Homeland Security chief. This new guy, Wolf or something, came on board. He has an interesting background. There's like so many different degrees and stuff like that. And then they restructured the USCIS field office system, going from 24 districts to 16, which is kind of weird. And there used to be 24 heads, now there's 16. So who got chopped? Who are the 8 district heads that lost their job? And what was the reason they lost their job? It's like some internal stuff.
And they jump around. We've seen them come and go, and they're just kind of buying their time for the next better position.
It seems, yeah. It's like they're constantly moving. It's like you got to run this district. This should be a position that stays there for 8 years, so they get some sort of
continuity.
Yeah. And so that's weird. The interesting thing that happened is CBP is not installing, other than Trump, other agency heads, because they have an internal policy that said it has to be a confirmed leader by the Senate for them to post a photo. So if you go to the port of entry, they'll have a picture of Trump and maybe the vice president, but they won't have the CBP head because it's an acting CBP. It's an interesting thing that they have going on.
It's weird to see procedure being followed.
Yeah, and especially for them, I was like, that's just peculiar.
It's odd.
The Trump U.S. asylum official have been pushed out by the Trump administration. State Department has hiring fees brought with broad significance. OIG found passport processing of states slows down on staffing lows. So these are the consequences. So U.S. citizens want to get passports, they can't or there's huge delays because there's just not enough staff. We have CBP apparently had some insider, some of them had this Facebook group where they were saying really vile stuff, and so that's that. Acting Customs and Border Protection Commissioner John Sanders resigned. So it's like constantly people coming and going, and it's like if you're working at somewhere and your boss is constantly changing, and each time someone comes, there's new leadership, new plans, it's like you kind of freeze. What are you going to do?
I'm going to use 2 examples. One, if you want government, quote unquote, to be run like a business, this business will be bankrupt. Yeah, so right off the bat, if that's what you feel, then you should be upset with the massive turnover of what's going on. On the flip side, I'm going to use sports again. If you constantly have to have a new coach, a new GM, if your ownership is never happy, then it's never one guy away or one person away. It's always a 3 or 5 year process. You need that stability. Yeah. Anything you've ever built took a long time to process. And so it's another sign that you don't spend your whole life building a career in these agencies to one day give it up. Something pushed you to the point that said, I cannot do this anymore. These people went down a road that said, all right, I'm already down this far, I might as well see where it goes.
These are people who bought into this stuff. Exactly. It was too much for them that they resigned. That's kind of crazy.
Well, and it's, from the standpoint of the audience and whoever's watching or listening, this is the backdrop of what you go into the office every day, that we're trying to work within a system that's almost unworkable. And so if you need to explain to your clients and potential clients, although I said A, B, and C will likely happen, I use likely very, very liberally because we don't know. And I just had a denial on a case, first of its kind, and I had to bend over backwards to tell my clients, this is an approvable case. They just didn't believe what we provided them, but how do you explain what is right in front of them, right? Yeah. And people get upset. People are upset about the money, the time spent. You said this, you said that. Yeah. And we have to be better as practitioners to really try to make it very digestible to say, I'm not just saying this to get to have an out. I'm not just saying, oh, Trump, blah, 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 so if something goes wrong, you can't blame me. What I'm trying to do is get your expectations where they should be, which is, I've assessed this case, I've done many of these cases, this is what's likely going to happen.
Yeah.
However, we're seeing curveballs every day. And so the instability, the turnover, you really just hope that if we can brave the storm, and I'm the forever optimist, as you know, John, that come, November, maybe we do see a massive shift in leadership. And I don't think, given where the Dems are going, I don't think it's going to be a small shift. I don't think we're going to go from, one person to a slight variation of that same person. I think we could potentially see an about face.
And that's what happens when you have extremism start. You have huge swings in the pendulum. It's like when you're on ice sledding on one side, you go to the extreme other side. Two things. One is the very most important thing I take away is here is that initial consultation, prepping people properly and about the consequences and saying it's unknown. And if it kind of makes them feel like you're being negative or like, oh, this other attorney promised me the world, and then go to the other attorney.
And that's business 101.
Yeah, you got to set the tone. And like I have processing times is something they really push me on. I say, okay, this is average, but again, and I repeat it twice. That's just an average. It could be much longer. It could be faster.
I just had a case that was half that time come in yesterday. Right, I just got an interview notice for something.
It could be adjustment case in 3 months now, but I mistakenly sometimes tell them, I'm like, listen, just because that's happened, it could easily be 2 years. Who knows? So like, don't think, and I'll send an email too, so it's constantly repeated, because they'll forget the bad stuff and remember stuff, good stuff, and then when it's delayed, they get frustrated with you. It's really important to set that standard.
And that's from a standpoint of a lawyer's toolbox, immigration lawyer's toolbox. You have to get good at understanding a moving target. And once you've understand it, the next job is being good at articulating that to your clients. And we all know that client that comes in, they're ready to pay in full on the spot, but you feel their energy. You feel that anxiety that you're like, oh my God, this person's going to be on me all the time. And even when we get things, it's never going to be quick enough. And even when we get good things happen or I make a miracle happen, they're not going to appreciate it. It's not worth the money. And you have to understand when to walk away from that person, because your mental health and your bandwidth is only so strong.
I mean, every time they issue one of these stupid memos, your brain just wants to like scream.
Absolutely, absolutely. We go from a game where we kick the ball to throwing it overnight, and now we're like, okay, I guess I got to get good at throwing it now.
There's one thing I skipped over, but there was this article that happened this year, and it really goes to show how telling to the clients about stuff. It says, British marketing manager visits girlfriend in Chicago, is locked up for 24 hours, deported, then banned from the U.S. for life. I mean, it probably wasn't for life. Oh, you did misread. After immigration officials scour his phone, this is Chicago, and find month-old text saying, I am moving to be with you. Quote, I am moving to be with you. Because they saw that, they said, oh, you have intent to come, expedited removal. Now, people call me, I'm like, well, I'm trying to visit my girlfriend, I'm leaving. Is it okay? 99% of the time, okay. But if they get your phone and they see some random text that says something.
A month ago. So they scoured. Think of how many times you text your wife.
Yeah.
Think of how long a month ago would have been. So they're just sitting there while you're held up for 24 hours to find one thing that they could say that's the reason. So again, they've already made their decision. They're just trying to find the smoking gun.
And so it's like, it's a client's like, is it okay? Is it okay if I have I-130 pending traveling to the U.S.? There's no answer. They call me. They want to fact. I'm like, dude, this is all based on the officer's board. Normally, I have clients, I tell them not to travel when they have I-130 pending come to the U.S., but they do and never had a problem. But you could be that one that gets expedited removal. So I'm like, make sure you get your return ticket. Make sure you keep your job back home. Don't give any excuse for them to like be a red flag. You know?
And then on the other side, being very intentional, let me know, and I'll maybe reach out to the port and see if I can go backdoor to say, hey, this person's coming in. These are the facts.
That's one thing I do. And it's very important. You have to have a relationship with the port. But and this is part of like the secret toolbox. If you're listening this much, like I contact the port of entry and say, listen, I've informed an email to it so it's written. I say, I informed my client this misrepresentation or fraud. If you come in and you stay here, and I have an email with them so they can use it. If they want, they can use that against us later too. To get the people coming and going, and especially when I have cases where someone's going to come get married and leave, because in India and in China they accuse you of misrep on your B2 for getting married. I have that on record with CBP, and I have a client print it out so in case the consular wants to throw that in your face, say, listen, Port Authority knew ahead of time that was my intent, and I left. There's no way you could accuse me of misrepresentation or fraud, unless they had just got their B2 tourist visa a week beforehand and then tell them they're engaged or something like that. But even then, you come to the U.S. to see your girlfriend and then you get married. Things happen. So
imagine if you had to abide by all of these unsaid rules and gray area in your own life. I mean, why do anything? You'd be manic. You'd never leave your house because you're scared. And it's a testament to like you said earlier, when we treat like immigrants or people that aren't from here like they're somehow different or lesser than, you allows you to villainize them in a way when these horrendous things happen. It's like, oh well, you know, they're not this or it's not like that.
Yeah.
And that's all part of the process to make you feel less bad about these types of things. And so it's you know, if you're not mad, you're not paying attention.
Mm-hmm. And you know, again, next section I added is just society section. New York, New Jersey, and LA California already did that. They're issuing driver's licenses to undocumented people, and that's big controversy in those kind of states. But why not have this system? Although, if I was undocumented with ICE checking systems, I wouldn't really trust going into the system.
If you have like an old order or something like that, you definitely, and we've been giving that advice to our clients in California. Oh yeah, you can do it. Oh well, they know they could, you know, but if you're driving without a license or insurance, that's also an issue. Yeah. So it's almost like the lesser of the two evils, right?
Because if they get pulled over and they don't have a license, then that's the trigger that happens, right? So it's like, it's hard if you have non-documentation, especially if you can DACA and some of those kind of cases.
Oh yeah, but it's a testament to, even in this federally driven anti-immigrant kind of positioning, we're seeing real leadership on the state level trying to make their citizens safer, their state safer, by giving people access to following their own rules. Because we need everybody insured. If everybody's insured, then we're all safe. If it's like access to contraceptions and abortion and things of that nature. Just because you say they can't do it doesn't mean things won't happen. And you put your own citizens in a far worse shape.
Yeah. And speaking of citizenship, so the federal courts blocked Trump's plan to include the citizenship question on 2020 census. But on the back end, DHS said they're going to start sharing their citizenship information with the census, so they got that there. Now, it's interesting, 21 Savage, this rapper who was kind of maybe a DACA kid, maybe a UV's old or something like that. He went in, did this musical performance on TV that talked bad about the immigration system. Immediately they busted him. And what's very disturbing is the ICE and stuff go on their Twitter and start putting false information about his background. It's like not appropriate. I just keep seeing on the Twitter for DHS and ICE, they keep saying stuff that's politically motivated. It's like, dude, you're a neutral agency. You shouldn't be saying this kind of stuff. Talking about senators and stuff. It's like, that's not your place to say this. It's inappropriate. Yeah. Like, just don't do that. Have it internally. It's very disturbing how they're doing these personal attacks like that.
Well, and with 21 Savage, it seems like, because I was at an event where he was honored, because of him being outspoken, it's a testament to, going back to what you said, you know, you're walking a fine line between, you know, doing your job and authoritarian type of activity. Yeah. If you're now saying all these bad things to take things personal, like, this is a job, bro. You know, your life's not dictated by this. Do you want to go home and be able to disconnect? Are you so consumed by the zeitgeist and the propaganda that you've been drinking from the Kool-Aid that
you have to double down. When you're in this system, you either get out of it or you have to double down on these beliefs just to stay within it, to fool yourself in it.
Well, and I was going to say, it ultimately comes down to, it's the same thing. Same people who are closeted that end up trying to, you know, outlaw, you know, LGBT
the Christian priest that's
everything,
full on doing drugs,
pedophile and everything like that. It's to the idea of doubling down. It's really a sad state of affairs where people are so sad and lonely inside because they can't be who they want to be, that the only way to make sense of it is to go down the rabbit hole and try to ruin other people's lives to convince yourself that what you're doing is right.
It's an amazing human psychological condition that we do that. It doesn't make any sense. No one would think that's the case, but just from practice of living life, you see it's like things that have the opposite of what you expect.
Well, and that's the practice of immigration law. It crosses so many different boundaries and so many different areas of like the world we live in, that you can't not notice these human tendencies of why people are the way they are.
Yeah. And so one note I had here was, one is in the Army, they're trying to make it harder to get green cards and citizenship, all that kind of stuff. But U.S. fertility rate is below the level needed to reduce population. You're seeing this in the Western world, in Japan as well, that we're not keeping up. So my thing is, do your part. You should get married. Hurry up.
No, I'm the other way around. I'm waiting for them to make it a better place to be able to procreate.
You and your kids will make it a better place. Trust me.
Fair.
From having a 3-month-old, which is just insane, do it while you're young, because you do not have the energy to run around these kids.
John, remember who you're talking to. Energy is not something I lack. If anything, I'll like the challenge of being a little less energetic. But I'll keep you posted.
Wait the good news.
There we go. I'll keep you posted.
But, you know, immigration needs to make up for that. I mean, if you have an economy that's growing, you need to have constantly people coming in. If we have a population that's going down, that's disastrous for a society. And
we are punting on the long-term growth and health of this country because people in power are only going to be in power for a short amount of time, so they are burning it to the ground while they're in control. And if you're not paying attention, again, you're not mad. It's just, again, let's use business. Let's use your own family. If you have if you're in a family and there's some inheritance that eventually is going to be yours, but in the meantime, your brother and sister, who's kind of the one not well put together, is borrowing against that inheritance and throwing it away, wouldn't you step in and do something? Because you know long term you're going to be in a far worse shape. It's just, it's another testament that people don't become immigration attorneys because it's easy, nor is it something that makes sense. If anything, you become an immigration attorney for a lot of reasons, but you stay in it because you realize we're all in this together and that we're first aid and CPR providers when the natural disaster hit, and it's almost, we owe it to society to continue doing what we're doing because we just know how this system's working.
And one information statistic that came out from the Census Bureau that a lot of the anti-immigration group jumped on, but I think it's a positive. It says data shows that 67.3 million people in the U.S. speak a foreign language at home, including more than half of people in 90 cities. So they say, oh, foreign people are coming to speak a language. It's like, dude, they're going to learn English. And so we have people that are dual language people. You know, in Europe, everyone speaks 4 languages. You go to like Germany, France, they all speak multiple languages. That's a powerful thing because that means they can do international business much better.
Well, and think about the brain development at a young age what that does for you. It's such a funny thing to be upset about, but it's a testament that we allow the worst of us to try to dictate the narrative.
I think it's bad with we feel out 2 languages. That's a horrible thing. It's like, who would say that? Smarter people. I
was going to say the next thing is, all these people know how to play the piano. Oh God, this is going to be bad because now everybody's going to have to play the piano. I think in LA County the statistic is something like English is a second language at the home for over like 70% of families in LA County. You know, it's 10 million people. And, you know, what a testament to what makes America so wonderful, which is people want to be here. People both want to hold on to where they come from, but are here because they want to be Americans and they want the American dream. They want that for their children. In few places in the world where if you're born here, regardless of where you're from, people see you as an American first. The way you see yourself as an American first. And it's our strength, but again, we're having to drink, you know, all of this rhetoric and anti-immigrant kind of Kool-Aid because those in power are trying to use it to stay in power.
Yeah, I have family members who were born and raised in Germany and France and generations now, and they're always a foreign person.
Always.
Yeah.
And it's as great as those places can be for a lot of reasons. If you don't look like a prototypical German or French person, you are reminded every day that you're not 100%.
And it's really the only place in the world. It's such a beautiful thing. It's the last great hope in the world. Because imagine if China gets all the power. That's another homogenous society that you're an outsider. They put you in a camp or deal with you like crap. You know, Japan doesn't. So all over Europe, even Russia has its own xenophobia everywhere. It's like it's a special place that we really got to keep.
Well, and to that note, I oftentimes, again, think about it from a sports analogy. You can love your team and be critical of your team and how the team is managed. Why we're talking about these things is because we want everybody to be successful. We want everybody to make money and be comfortable.
I have kids here. I have a future in this land. I want to keep it clean. I want to keep it working.
You want temperatures to remain something that we can live in. And if you think about it in any way, we're trying to give the opportunities you and I had as being born and raised here to the next generation. And as we see some of these doors being closed or at least semi-closed, you realize that the American experiment is trying to ask that people be their best and to kind of don't look in the past like most countries do. They think about where they come from, where their family comes from, where they are in society. We're about a country that thinks about the future. And if you eliminate the best and the brightest, or if you eliminate people that work really hard to get here and thrive, again, you're cutting off your nose to spite your face. We're intentionally poisoning our future by not allowing this kind of equation to continue to play out, especially as birth rates are down, especially as generations and their ideas of families and those things have changed fundamentally from our grandparents' generation. And so, you know, this is when leadership needs to call a spade and say what's happening is not sensible at all and completely rooted in xenophobic and, you know, poisonous type of rhetoric.
Yeah, and I mean, talking about xenophobia, there's an activist who was jailed and he got acquitted finally for putting water out for people on the border. Federal judge ruled that it's a crime, it's rule that making it a crime to encourage and induce immigration or immigrants to enter a country legally is unconstitutional. There's a case that's going to the Supreme Court, which is whether we could even guide our clients in something that could potentially break the law or something like that. And that's the worst, as a practice matter, we got to be very mindful of and challenge that, even if the court does says it goes. So essentially, for example, if I tell a client, don't go to San Diego, it's too close to the border, it might be a checkpoint, that's illegal because I'm giving you advice on how to get away with being here illegally. But as a lawyer, and that's not immigration lawyers, it should be personal injury lawyers, criminal attorneys. This is advice. This is America. Law is America.
A DUI attorney.
Yeah.
I mean, what are you gonna do there? Are you now gonna villainize and make illegal a confidential information about, hey, these are the rules. This is what you're doing. Be mindful of these rules. That's all we're advocating.
So
to outlaw and step on legal representation and the client confidentiality that we have always held so dear.
American as apple pie. If that goes, then we're screwed. The lawyers can't. They can always bash lawyers and talk negatively, but like, dude, we're the protectors of the Constitution.
I was going to say, any movement anywhere in the world that was worth its weight and changed things for the better, oftentimes it was led by lawyers. And so it doesn't mean they're not bad ones out there. We know them.
Gandhi was a lawyer,
them.
yeah.
There we go. We see them all the time, but it's the same thing with the people that do the dirty work. Yeah, doctors this, doctors that. Well, at the end of the day, if you get sick, you need a doctor.
Yeah.
So you could be critical of costs and things of that nature, but at the end of the day, you need them, and lawyers are in the same boat.
And to finish that off, it was probably would have been another segment better, but Trump signed a memorandum. They're going to start enforcing the I-864 sponsorship requirements for social services. Before, pretty much, even if you fell afoul of I-864 and you were, getting social services where you wouldn't, they weren't really pursuing it. But Trump wants to go after that and collect that money from the sponsors.
The chilling effect to try to get people who otherwise would have helped out a friend or a loved one to be like, no, I don't want to deal with this.
As a practice management thing, you have to really have a good disclaimer and informational to the joint sponsors so they don't come back later and say you didn't tell them. Some lawyers are saying, I won't even handle I-864s or joint sponsor I-864s, get your separate attorney. I don't know if you need to go that far, but
extra cautious. Because I think a majority of joint sponsors are somebody very close to the person, so there's an inherent trust that's already there.
But just have them sign off as listen, you're aware of your responsibilities. If you want to get separate legal guys, if you want to do this or not, because generally my advice is don't take responsibility. So if you want to do I-864, don't do it. That's because you might have to pay for somebody. Yeah. But you might want to take that risk because it's a loved one or someone you care about, or you're rich and you don't give a damn or something.
Or
like that.
the person's really successful, and the last thing you worry about is that within the next 10 years or before they nats, that they're going to somehow go on the government.
But just to protect yourself, just have them sign off. Even though the I-864 lists all the responsibilities of reading that, have a separate disclaimer to sign off when you give it to them. I have that. And I keep increasing, lawyer contracts getting longer and longer. But just because if they're going to start enforcing social services, they're going to start pulling in the lawyer and say the lawyer didn't tell me, and that could be an issue that's going to hassle you. So move on to the EOIR, BIA courts and stuff like that. District Court blocked DHS from expanding expedited removal, which is really happy. They want to do more expedited removal. But right now, if you're here for a certain amount, like 7 days or 14 days within a 100-mile border or something like that, they can get you. They want to make it for a 2-year period and really enforce it within the boundaries of the U.S. because everywhere in the U.S. is close to the border. So it's, again, going back to ICE's, Turkey totalitarianism. The burden of proof for me, a natural-born citizen, to prove I'm a U.S. national is on me if ICE stop me. Say, prove you're a citizen. And I'm like, well, here's my driver's license. I have a federal driver's license. That may help something. But what if I'm not carrying I'm jogging in the morning. I don't have any ID. They catch me and say, well, you look like you're from Iran. Are you here illegally? And I'm like, what are you saying?
What's your last name? That's Iranian.
You sound have an accent or something like that. Yeah.
You could be Canadian.
And there was this one kid at the border, like a 22-year-old kid that was walking near Texas. They busted him, and he had a social security card on him. They held him for like 6 weeks or more. He's like, dude, took my social security number. That comes up, They didn't bother doing this. They held the U.S. citizens for that long, and so I'm glad the courts did that. District Court did that. Hopefully, keep it blocked. Department of Justice prosecuted a record number of immigrant-related cases in fiscal year 2019. So we're using the mechanism of the Department of Justice, which has to fight terrorism and crimes and things. Majority of their prosecutions, their numbers are high. It's immigration-related crimes. Yeah. So it's just a waste of resources.
I usually use speeding as an analogy. Oh, we want to now ticket everyone that speeds. Okay, so we're now going to we need 10 times as many police officers, and we're going to sit there. Oh man, that's a lot of resources. That's a lot of time. What's the point? Oh, well, that we just want it because you broke the law, so we need to ticket you. It's again another symptom of this is politics for politics' sake. It have little to do with actually helping America be stronger, better, or more well off.
And the BIA, Bureau Board of Immigration Appeals, I don't usually deal with them, but it's really getting bad. So they changed up the board, got these people on that are really anti-immigrant. And so there's IJ does not have to specify inconsistently that leads to denial in an asylum case. So that's a new rule. They said they could just probably deny outright. Procedural entry good even if a false ID. That was a positive on that end. BI upheld illogical deportation ruling 9th Circuit. So this is pretty much that decision, matter of cash or tum. The court said, the NTAs have to be proper, and then BI says no. So it's this messed up situation. And then BI said another ruling in 2020 where they said on the NTA you don't have to write the address of the court. So if you're an immigrant who doesn't speak English, they get a notice that has the wrong date on it, no address, no anything. What do you expect? It's just so stupid. Just do your job. Type it up. How hard is that?
Again, if this was in any other world, people would say there's an angle here, there's politics here, because there's no way any of this is people applying the law, and that's that. There's a political leaning to all of this to try to make it so that people mess up.
But on the other end, the backlog of cases, like 1 million cases in UIR or the courts right now, it's like, dude, you're just creating backlog, Now, interesting thing is some courts, it was a court in Boston, I think it said, for bond hearings, they turned the burden on the government. It should have been the case. If you're going to detain somebody, what really bothers me is immigrants don't get the same constitutional rights of being detained. If you're in the U.S., and you're detained, you have to have rights, but the state doesn't do that. That's protection for all of us. So the government doesn't get willy-nilly happy detaining people for no reason. And I'm so happy this Boston court said at least the burden is on the government to prove that a bond is to hold them or not hold them in the bond and all that kind of stuff.
Well, there's the Bill of Rights for that, right?
What? The Bill of who? And so EOIR director given power to decide BIA cases, a new rule. This was interesting. BIA says meritless affirmative asylum cases. Sometimes people file asylum cases so they can force cases to court so they can do a cancellation remove or something like that. They're going to hold that as a negative and consider that fraud and not let that move forward. So there's got to be more stuff, but it's been, an hour and 18 minutes. I'm going to end it, but before that, I have a note. I was going to talk about how the year was for me. I didn't even bring it out to you, so I'll give you some time to think about what I say. But 2019 was a wonderful year in general in the sense that the podcast grew dramatically. Every day I have one person that contacts me, a lawyer every day that says thank you for the podcast, for listening. I was like, damn, every time there's a LinkedIn thing, there's an email here, I'm like, dude, is that much of an audience and it's touching a whole generation of immigration lawyers? That's unbelievable. That's unbelievable. So,
well, and it's hard to email or contact somebody that you don't know. So for the fact that people want you to know that they appreciate it, and that's that, it's a real sign that all of the time and energy that's going into it is important.
And it's hard because and another thing is I have my second child, 3-month-old. It's been hard I want to pump out more material, but it's been really hard. But it still comes. We're supportive and say all the nice stuff. So that was wonderful. The second kid was wonderful. That came out. And no sleep. If you're going to have kids, I would say don't start your own immigration law practice if you're about to have a kid because it's hard to give both of them the time. I was quoted in the podcast, was quoted in the New York Times by a great author and immigrant advocate, and so that was really interesting. It was in the New York Times, and that caused a lot of attention to come to the podcast. The Immigration Lawyers Toolbox was launched in this website, which is informational, all the social media stuff. They keep updating people and be a centralized location for just facts on the ground. Because one thing I found is we have our organization, AILA is so big and stuff, but I wanted specific facts, numbers, what's going on with the field office. They'll do a liaison meeting with the Department of State and it'll be a 10-page thing, but I want to pick out the stuff that really matters for us and put that out there. So that was good. And along with that, the Champions for Freedom training program for immigration lawyers to learn immigration law and to learn how to do marketing has taken off and it's been wonderful. My students constantly tell me that, I just got some cases online. I just got this case in. So their revenue stream is just jumping up because of it. So that's been wonderful. So my life is personal life, growing the family, business-wise, growing the practice, but my emphasis is primarily on the podcast, the Immigration Lawyers Toolbox, and the Champions for Freedom training program. This educational part of instead of the knowledge immigration law that I have given to clients is more towards fellow practitioners and colleagues. So that's been an emphasis that's growing, as well as the practice. My focus is pretty much mostly adjusted family marriage cases. That was the bulk of my practice this year because it's so time-consuming to do an L or EB1C, and they're so annoying when I get the RFPs and stuff. And even when you win, it's just like it's like too much of a burden. I'm like,
well, and I'm sure you're not the other one that to change your practice in a way that realizes it's no longer cost effective to take on these massive cases that the government's going to try to shoot down left and right, all for the sake of getting a victory, but at what cost, right? If you have a big team, if you have a big Office, okay, maybe you can farm it out and it's fine.
Yeah.
There's only so many hours in the day.
Yeah, I'm a full solo, and that attention clients get is really good, but it makes it like I can't take on these huge cases unless the L1 is really clean. Even then it pushes back. But my specialty was new office L1s, where there's a little bit of money, barely any staff, and bare bones, and that was my mastery because I mastered that. And I'm good at fighting that, but I'm trying to make this toolbox as like, so I'm like, marriage cases, I can have a system on that, even though I do everything myself, and I don't really use real form programs even now. So, but it was a wonderful year, and it really, my investment is not to grow the firm to make money now. In the way as the digital economy grows, my investment is in my audience and my community and the influencer aspect of my life, and that's going to be a long-term investment that's going to make a lot of money, a lot of power, all that kind of stuff that comes with it, as opposed to going to a law firm that creates money and power. I'm betting on digital and betting on the new economy that comes from that, and so I was spending my time making hundreds of thousands less this year. I could have made an additional 100, 200,000 I could have made investing in not making that money, but investing in you. And I do that by sharing information willy-nilly, free, and not really, expecting much back, but then creating this community with all these emails with this group I've made. So that's been the conscious decision I'm continuing to next year and just get better at it with the videos and the information and the communication and groups I've made. Mm-hmm. So how was your 2019 been?
Yeah, so is it was my second full year on my own. I've been almost practicing 8 years, so it's interesting. I'm getting this year, I will have been on my own longer than I've been anywhere else, which is kind of fun when you get to that point, right? And, continuing to kind of grow within leadership and a lot of the different entities we're a part of, whether it's local in the LA County Bar world that we're in, or AILA, American Immigration Lawyers Association. I've taken up more responsibility. I'm doing more there. The aspect of networking and really just putting yourself out there. From the office standpoint, I just work. I put in the hours, and even just in the first few weeks of 2020, it's been extremely busy. There's been a lot of traffic, and I tell my clients this, I'm more interested in high quality individuals than I am with easy cases. Yeah. Because I think in immigration, we really do come into people's lives and we stay there. Mm-hmm. And from a business standpoint, that's great, because then anything they could ever need, they come to you, right? And you build this built-in client base that even though if they don't need an adjustment anymore or citizenship anymore, maybe their family, their friends, their colleagues. And so it's been wonderful to kind of build that organically. A lot of family, a lot of USCIS-based work that I do.
One thing I like about you go on vacations.
That's true.
And so I see on Facebook, all of a sudden he's all over the place, and I'm like, God bless, that's the right thing.
And you know why? Because people expect lawyers to take vacations, and it's almost like, oh, he must be good because he seemingly can do it all. And so it's funny how, and I tell this to attorneys all the time, if you don't take time off when your clients expect you to take time off, I think they wonder, wait, are you not doing well enough so you can take time off, right? Now, the big X factor is no kids, right?
Yeah.
I can imagine if me and my wife...
I'm afraid to get on a plane with a kid. It's such a nightmare.
I had a buddy who, him and his wife took a big family trip. Their family takes a lot of trips to Jamaica through Miami. So to Miami, fine. To Jamaica, fine. From Jamaica to Miami, coming home, and then Miami back to LA. My friend's wife, or my friend, the mom, said I would have easily rather given birth again. It was that bad. Yeah. And so I also think, and I'm in my early 30s, that as I build my practice and as I build my own kind of brand as an attorney, I often think, if I'm not going to grind now, when am I going to grind? Yeah. Right? And to the idea of energy and things of that nature. So it was a great year. It was another year in a way that I can say to myself and look in the mirror, I'm doing this the right way. I'm seeing growth. It's very organic. I'm taking care of people. Online reviews, things of that nature, the things that my clients say is consistently a testament that, as you and I always ask ourselves, as all people ask themselves, is what I'm doing what I want to be doing? Am I happy with what I'm doing? It's been a resounding response back. Yes, you should be doing this. And so I really enjoy that. I think that if I ever went into local politics or anything like that, I'm happy to be able to build that reputation, and that's what I'm doing now. Mm-hmm. To kind of be a part of the community, to look after people. And like you said, not because I want to make a bunch of money now, but I want to take care of people so that inevitably they take care of me.
Yeah.
And
that's the whole community aspect. It's like, nowadays people rely on Social Security to take care of when they get old or something like that, but it's like, or the police that come. But if you have a good neighborhood and you know any of your neighbors, and they'll watch out for you. If you have a good community, and I've singled out the immigration lawyers community, it's a national community. If we're able to connect, make our trade associations much tighter in our relationships, you can support each other in different ways that we do imagine.
Big time. And I mean, we are so unique in the legal space, right? You had to take 100 attorneys randomly across the country. What, 45 will be plaintiff side, PI, 45 will be civil side, or defense on the civil side, 10 will do everything else. Yeah. And we'll maybe 1% of that, right? We in of ourselves are a very small minority within the attorney space. And so for that way, it's not like we can go to an ABA conference or connect with a local bar association and be like, and talk, because it's like, oh, we don't go to Superior Court. We're not dealing with civil judges, and we're not dealing with insurance companies. And so the community is such a smart and valuable thing to invest in, because the other part of our practice is we have the most interesting, thoughtful, fun people in our practice.
Yeah.
Attorneys aren't necessarily known to be fun people. And in the immigration space, we are.
Yeah.
And oftentimes it's because we come from a diverse background. We're not all...
Our Christmas parties are fun. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We're not all sons and daughters of attorneys that have been attorneys forever.
Yeah.
Right? We don't have estates and trust accounts. We're, I think, people that want to do good, that want to make a living, and oftentimes have our own story when it comes to immigration or the immigrant experience. Yeah. And so 2019 was a great year. And with my optimism, I'm very hopeful that we'll get new leadership. I'm very hopeful that the darkest is always before the dawn, and that we've seen, without proper leadership and infrastructure, a madman with a handful of anti-immigrant lackeys can really flip our entire country on its head. Yeah. And so I feel like we learned a lot, and sometimes you need to break a bone to put it back together again, especially if it wasn't growing in the best way possible. And although a lot of good things happened under the Obama administration, things were not perfect.
Yeah.
And if anything, maybe by these really awful things happening across the board, we as a generation will remind ourselves never to look a blind eye when these little things happen in the immigration space.
Yeah.
And that maybe the social consciousness will, within the United States, will come back to the idea that how we treat the most vulnerable is reflective towards who we are as the United States.
Yeah.
So, who knows, maybe by this time next year, we're doing a 2020 rap video. Not that type of rap video. We're talking about, new president coming in, inauguration would be a week away, and we're gearing up. I got twins on the way, the whole thing.
Well, that made 2 points. If to take home, wanted to say is, think about the long-term community, and not just your current money-making firm, but have that aspect of 10 years down the line, let's do stuff there that won't pay off now, but it's in the long term. So that's something to keep in mind. And the other thing is, pray for peace. Let's on the brink of war almost randomly, like this president.
Randomly, yeah. Well, and to the idea about invest in the long term. If you're not in this business to look after one another and to help each other out, if you see an attorney fumbling around in court and don't know what they say, scratch a little note, give them a tip. If you see somebody or somebody on one of the message boards asks a simple question, you're like, oh, that's a stupid question, everybody knows that. Take a step back, respond to them, because we've all been there and we know what it's like to feel like we're in over our skis. And you've seen it, and that's why you're spending so much time. I've seen it. When you look after one another for the sake of just the greater good, financially, that dollar that you didn't make will come back tenfold, 100-fold. And so don't be so quick to say, and I get this a lot, if I can't see how I'm going to make money, I'm not going to do it.
Yeah.
Because it's just like, okay, well then in the meantime, I'm going to do all these things you're not volunteering for or going out to do, and I'm going to build my brand, I'm going to build my reputation. And guess what ends up happening? I end up getting calls, texts, emails, can you do this, can you do that, can you help me with this? And sky's the limit as far as what I can make on all of that. All because you felt, oh no, it's not worth my time.
Yeah. Yeah, there's an unseen that you just gotta take a dive and do it and try out all this kind of stuff. But the community is there.
Oh yeah, and you know what? Here's to, like you said, no war, and potentially the last year that we're gonna have to deal with this administration. Let's see.
Let's see. I was going to say let's do predictions and stuff, but this one's gone long enough.
Very true.
Yeah.
We'll come together maybe after the first quarter and go over predictions. Absolutely.
Yeah, and should we do a quarterly to recap of happening, what's going to happen? Also, it'd be interesting to instead of waiting a whole year to do this recap.
Absolutely.
Well, good stuff. Thank you so much, Nicholas. Happy
Always
New
a
Year.
pleasure, John. Thank you. Thank everybody listening and watching, and I'll see you next time.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.